You know who you are?
Steven is my name.
Even Steven.
Will you say something, Steven?
Steeven Orr Media.
Remember the magic of Saturday mornings? A time when waking up early wasn't a chore, it was an adventure. Those hours were sacred, a weekly ritual that pulled us into worlds of animated heroes, villains, and endless possibilities. Hey folks, I'm Steven, and I want to welcome you to my new podcast, Growing Up Geek, a temporal odyssey through the geek-centric cultural zeitgeist of my youth. From the 70s through the 80s and on into the 90s, we'll explore the movies, the music, the books, the comics, and the TV shows that shaped my childhood and made me, well, me. In our first season, we're diving into the golden age of Saturday morning cartoons, the history, the magic, and the cultural impact these shows had on a generation. For over 5 decades, Saturday mornings weren't just about watching cartoons. They were a shared experience among millions of kids who were all watching the same shows at the same time. We're talking superheroes, slapstick animals, mystery-solving teens, and fantasy lands where anything seemed possible. It was the perfect blend of entertainment and imagination that left a lasting imprint on all of us. Episode 1 will take us back to where it all began, the birth of Saturday morning cartoons. These shows didn't just come out of nowhere, they evolved over time, shaped by the experimental spirit of the 60s, the groovy vibes of the 70s, and the commercial powerhouse of the 80s. In each decade, they mirrored the cultural shifts, the innovations, and yes, even the rise of commercialism that made Saturday morning cartoons not just fun, but a full-blown phenomenon. We'll touch on Scooby-Doo, the Jetsons, Super Friends, and so many others that became household staples. And we'll talk about how these cartoons were carefully crafted to entertain kids, sell products, and reflect the bigger stories unfolding in the world. In episode 2, we'll explore the twilight years of Saturday morning cartoons, from the 90s through the 2000s and all the way up to 2014, when Saturday morning cartoons quietly slipped into history. This was a time of transformation where cable networks like the Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, as well as weekday afternoon cartoon blocks like Fox Kids, took over, bringing a new kind of weekday cartoon frenzy. The classic Saturday morning started to lose ground, but it wasn't without a fight. We'll talk about what these years meant for kids programming, how the big networks tried to adapt, and what ultimately led to the end of an era. Then, in our third and final episode of the season, I'm joined by a special guest, and we get a little nostalgic. This episode is all about the memories, the theme songs we couldn't get out of our heads, the cliffhangers that kept us talking all week, and the sheer excitement of seeing our favorite characters come to life week after week as we count down our top 5 favorite Saturday morning cartoons ever. We'll also share some of our favorite Saturday morning memories and the little rituals that made each Saturday feel special, like sitting down with a bowl of cereal and flipping open the TV guide to see what was coming up. But don't take my word for it, folks. Why not hear a bit of what's in store? Here's a preview from episode number 1, where we dig into the early days of Saturday morning cartoons and how it all began. Now, before we can jump into the explosion of Saturday morning cartoons in the 1960s, we need to step back and look at the larger history of television and animation. Television itself was still a relatively new medium in the early 1950s, and while live-action programming dominated, there was a clear gap in content aimed specifically at children. Early television was finding its footing with a mix of radio shows adapted for the small screen and live variety programs. But where did animated content fit into this picture? To understand that, we have to go back to the golden age of theatrical cartoon shorts from the 1930s and 40s. Before TV became the dominant form of home entertainment, kids and families flocked to theaters to watch cartoon shorts that played before feature films. This was the era of Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, and Popeye, with characters like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Porky Pig dominating the screen.
Say, what is that? A percolator on a roller skate?
Bet my Tootsie can beat his old silverfish.
These animated shorts were wildly popular and often packed with humor, slapstick, and even some subtle adult-oriented satire. Audiences loved the antics of characters like Mighty Mouse, Tom and Jerry, and Betty Boop. And it wasn't long before the network saw the potential to repurpose these shorts for television. As television sets began making their way into American homes in the late 1940s and early 50s, networks scrambled to fill airtime. Theatrical cartoon shorts provided an easy way to entertain children without the need for original production. Classic characters like Bugs Bunny and Popeye made their television debuts, becoming staples of early children's programming. The marriage of television and animation was inevitable, but something new was on the horizon. Cartoons made exclusively for the TV screen. This brings us to Crusader Rabbit, which holds a special place in television history as the first cartoon specifically created for television.
When we left our little hero Crusader Rabbit last time, he had just received word that the state of Texas was planning a campaign to rid herself of every last jackrabbit within her boundaries. Well, you can imagine how that set with our boy Crusader.
Premiering in 1950, Crusader Rabbit was a simple but groundbreaking series that featured a rabbit embarking on various adventures. Though the animation was limited, the show set the stage for a whole new wave of cartoons designed to fit within TV's episodic format. In many ways, Crusader Rabbit was a prototype for what Saturday morning cartoons would later become, introducing the concept of serialized, made-for-TV animation that could hold children's attention week after week. By the time we entered the 1960s, TV networks were catching on to the idea that there was a massive, untapped audience in the form of kids glued to their screens on Saturday mornings. So picture this. It's the early 1960s. Television is still a relatively new phenomenon, with color TV just starting to gain traction in American households. There are only 3 networks, and all 3 of them, ABC, NBC, and CBS, are locked in a competitive race to figure out how to fill their weekend programming schedules. This is a time when kids were typically at home on Saturday mornings while their parents slept in or got caught up on weekend chores. Well, it didn't take long for network executives to recognize that this block of time was prime real estate. With millions of young, impressionable viewers waking up early and searching for entertainment, the idea of targeting children with dedicated programming emerged. Thus, Saturday morning cartoons were born.
Calling all kids. Calling all kids. Keep an eye out for these 2 birds. One calls himself Heckle, the other Jekyll. They're a pair of real comedians. There's another bird following them, the world's funniest penguin. He goes under the name of Tennessee Tuxedo.
Back then, the network started by airing reruns of older animated shows like The Flintstones and The Jetsons, both of which originally premiered in prime time. The Flintstones, in fact, holds the distinction of being one of the first animated series aimed at an adult audience in its primetime slot, often compared to modern-day sitcoms like The Simpsons or Family Guy for its time.
How's the air up there, girls?
It's getting thin, Fred, just like my patience.
But something happened as these reruns aired on Saturday mornings. The kids loved them. The humor, the bright colors, and the fantastical storylines resonated with a younger audience. Soon enough, networks realized they had a gold mine on their hands. They could keep kids entertained and glued to their screens for hours, giving advertisers a direct line to households across the country. Thus began a trend that would dominate American culture for decades: the Saturday morning cartoon block. And that, folks, is just a taste of what's coming up on Growing Up Geek. So grab your cereal, settle in, and let's relive those iconic Saturday mornings together. Whether you're a lifelong geek who lived for those Saturday morning lineups, or someone curious about the cartoons that defined a generation, Growing Up Geek is the show for you. Season 1 lands soon, folks, so subscribe now to make sure that you don't miss a minute of the fun, nostalgia, and stories that defined our weekends. You know, when we were growing up geek. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Growing Up Geek. Questions and comments can be directed to growingupgeekpodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can help to boost our presence online by leaving a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. I also invite you to join our subscription program, Steeven Orr Beyond, and in return, you'll get episodes of Growing Up Geek early and ad-free. Check out the link in the show notes, or just go to growingupgeekpodcast.com to sign up today. Growing Up Geek is a presentation of Steeven Orr Media. For more nerdy content hosted by me, check out SteevenOrelse.com.
I just don't think I can move through life knowing that a guy named Steven did this to me.
How could you let this happen, Steven?
Your podcast sucks.
Hail to the king, baby.
Steven! Thank God. I had a horrible feeling I was going to be the only one here.